Welcome to this post-cabinet briefing. Without much further ado, I will hand you over to the Chief Secretary of the President and Cabinet.
Thank you very much. Honorable Chair and Ministers, members of the media, we welcome you to the 32nd post-cabinet briefing. And as usual, the presentation will be given by the Chair of the Ministerial Briefing Team. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chief Secretary. And so once again, I always want to thank the members of the Fourth Estate. They are always there for us. I also want to welcome my colleague ministers. I do have Honorable Professor Mugira here, who is the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, but he's also standing in as the Vice Chair for the Ad hoc Committee on the Task Force on COVID-19. Then I do have Honorable Kazembe, our Minister of Home Affairs. And right behind me, there is Honorable Yovu, who is the Minister of Environment, Tourism, and Honorable Kirsty Coventry, our Minister of Sports and Youth. They will be there to take your questions. Today, Cabinet received an update on the steps that are being taken to contain the COVID-19 pandemic from the Minister of Defense and War Veterans Affairs, Honorable Osise Muchinguri, as the chairperson of the Ad hoc Interministerial Task Force on the COVID-19 outbreak. In terms of testing, the Ministry of Health and Childcare has, in line with WHO guidelines, adopted a system-based management approach which prioritizes the testing of those people showing COVID-19 symptoms. Then, in view of the reopening of schools for examination classes, opening of the tourism and hospitality industry, aviation sectors, and the need to afford the working class time to attend gymnasia, Cabinet approved the extension of business operating hours, including those of gymnasia, from 6:30 a.m. to 1830 hours. Cabinet further approved the resumption of intercity travel. This is to facilitate the smooth movement of examination candidates, citizens, and visitors. Transporters who wish to ferry passengers in this intercity travel should register with the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructural Development to ensure that they strictly comply with standard operating procedures for their sector, which are compliant to the WHO guidelines and all COVID-19 regulations. In support of this service, the Vehicle Inspection Department, VID, should also resume its services. All employees in the tourism sector should comply with the COVID-19 regulations, as is done in all the other approved services. I also want to say only international travelers are required to provide a 48-hour negative COVID-19 certificate. Then, in order to facilitate access to critical documentation from Central Registry during the COVID-19 induced lockdown, Cabinet approved that the Central Registry should reopen and offer services such as the issuance of births and death certificates, national registrations, as well as passports. Measures are being put in place to ensure that operations at Central Registry offices, which are usually characterized by overcrowding, are in line with the Ministry of Health and Childcare and WHO protocols. This is in order to curtail the transmission of COVID-19. Members of the public will be informed on the timelines for accessing the critical services. Cabinet further authorized the partial reopening of the Department of Immigration Client Service Center for the purposes of processing short-term investor work and student permits, also issuing out visas at ports of entry, and resume enforcement operations through the compliance section. The National Museums and Monuments of Zimbabwe will be opened to allow visitors access to national monuments that include the National Heroes Acre and National History Museum. Cabinet reiterates that despite the measures taken today to further open up the economy, the threat from COVID-19 is still real, and citizens should continue to religiously adhere to the COVID-19 containment measures. Then Cabinet received a review of the Communal Areas Management Program for Indigenous Resources, CAMPFIRE. Cabinet considered and approved proposals to refocus and revitalize the Communal Areas Management Program for Indigenous Resources, CAMPFIRE, and this was presented by the Minister of Transport and Infrastructure Development as the chair. Implementing the proposals will result in a more effective and transparent CAMPFIRE that will benefit communities and further operationalize the devolution concept. The CAMPFIRE initiative targets the conservation and sustainable utilization of wildlife and other natural resources as livelihood options for rural communities. Cabinet highlights that a widely consultative CAMPFIRE review process was conducted in 2016, and this revealed that the CAMPFIRE program was experiencing institutional, operational, legal, and external challenges. Furthermore, the CAMPFIRE model is highly dependent on hunting revenue, which generates 90% of the total revenue. There is need for diversification if the program is to remain viable. Cabinet noted that the CAMPFIRE program should diversify into other activities such as photographic safaris, ecotourism, bird viewing, flora and fauna, to widen the revenue base and explore alternative markets for trophy hunting. In order to guarantee the proper regulation and enforcement of stakeholder benefits and to resolve current misunderstandings between the rural district councils and producer communities, Cabinet concurred on the need to ensure that the CAMPFIRE program becomes more efficient and induces economic growth in line with Vision 2030. Cabinet thus approved the following: that a statutory instrument on CAMPFIRE regulations be enacted, clearly spelling out, among other things, the definition of appropriate authority status and roles, appropriate authority conferment procedures and revocation, then producer communities, revenue sharing mechanisms and ratios, and accountability and institutional arrangements for a renewed CAMPFIRE model. And that the Parks and Wildlife Act and the Environmental Management Act will be aligned to the Constitution, and that the provisions on the clear roles and responsibilities of ZimParks as regulator of the CAMPFIRE program be incorporated. Cabinet also directed that appropriate standard operational procedures for CAMPFIRE and community-based natural resources management be established. To attract improved funding flows to CAMPFIRE, the existing laws will be strengthened to compel CAMPFIRE to establish credible systems, and in addition, a practitioner's manual for CAMPFIRE community-based natural resources management in Zimbabwe will be developed by the Parks and Wildlife Management Authority. The Cabinet received a report on the Zimbabwe's revised agro-ecological regions. Cabinet has adopted the revised Zimbabwe agro-ecological zones as presented by the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development, Honorable Professor Murgira. The revised zones, developed using local capacity and being testimony of the success of Education 5.0, will revolutionize agricultural planning and practice in Zimbabwe to make it more precise, as it will no longer be based on the outdated agroecological zones which were developed between 1945 and 1960. In response to the urgent need of aligning agricultural practice with the changing climatic patterns, the government of Zimbabwe, through the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development, initiated a revision of the country's agroecological zones. Based on the observed pattern of rainfall and temperature and their influence on agricultural practice, the revision of the agroecological zones had two main objectives. That is, one, to redefine the agroecological zones based on the current climate trend and recommend land use practices for each zone. And two, to develop an interactive software AgroZim mobile application that would assist users of the updated agroecological zones to get important, especially explicit information which is required to guide agricultural practice in Zimbabwe. Cabinet informs the public that the Zimbabwe Agro-ecological Zone Map will be availed as a mobile application, thus bringing numerous benefits to farmers who will be able to access information related to the agroecological zones, the appropriate land use also, as well as the rainfall patterns, temperatures, and soil types of the areas, among other information. This mobile application will be free to download and will be available on Google Play Store. The use of these agroecological zones, natural regions, is very important as it allows crops or livestock to be produced within their appropriate climatic regions. Then Cabinet also received principles for the proposed Sport and Recreation Amendment Bill. Cabinet considered and approved principles on the proposed Sport and Recreation Amendment Bill as presented by the Minister of Youth, Sports, Arts and Recreation, Honorable Kirsty Coventry. Cabinet noted that Zimbabwe currently has no legislation which regulates sport in general, and that the Sport and Recreation Commission Act does not define recreation, hence creating overlaps with other entities such as tourism, Zim parks, and the National Arts Council. The bill is therefore to redress this situation. I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Now we come to when we will be inviting members of the media to pose questions on the issues that were raised, very diverse, very critical for the development of our country. Any persons at this session who want to initiate? Yes, please.
I'm I'm a freelance journalist. My question is going to be to the Honorable Chair. Since business trading hours have been reviewed, can you make a comment on the curfew? Is the curfew still on, or it's automatically going to be off because the hours of trading being reviewed? Thank you.
Okay. Any second offer? Yes, please.
My name is Tafazwa Mfuluriwa.
Yes, speak a bit.
Tafazwa Mfuluriwa. I'm a freelance. My question goes to maybe, I don't know who can tackle it, the issue of transport. You mentioned that those who want to transport intercity travel should register. Is it only intercity or it's local? Okay, I just want clarity on that. Is it only intercity or?
Okay. Thank you. Yes, please.
My name is Blessed Mtlama from Music and Heart and Soul TV and Radio. My question is on the opening of the schools. I noted that government has availed 600 million to the opening of schools. Is there a modality on how these schools are going to access this money to ensure that there's a smooth opening of schools? You also mentioned that VID is opening services. What type of services is it opening? Is it opening all, including for learners, for people who want to get driver's license? Because we have noted that in the past, people have become, they're being fleeced of money by people who were offering a fake driver's license because of desperation and because of the closure of the VID. And also a follow-up on the question on the roadblocks that are there. As we have relaxed lockdown measures and businesses almost gone back to normal, are police not able, are they not competently able to manage those roadblocks without the help of soldiers? Do they have the requisite manpower to be able to do that by themselves without involving soldiers? Because we understand that the police have not recruited for a very long time, and they are severely undermined. Is that the correct position? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Last contributor. Yes, please, the second time.
This time I'm going to be going to the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs. Since a report has been made that the Central Registry is going to be resuming operations, maybe the Minister of Home Affairs could give us a status in terms of production, as in specifically passport production. Do they now have the requisite material so that they can be able to be covering the backlog that we've witnessed for the local?
Okay, thank you. That completes the first section.
There are actually more than 4, because Blessed alone, I think you put 3 questions. But all the same, thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Secretary. The first question is going to Professor Morgira as Vice Chair of the Task Force, and the second one also. This is from Kudzai Madzire, Professor, and he wants a comment since there's been relaxation of times for business. Is there going to be, he says, can you comment on the curfew? And maybe you can tackle the same one with Tafazwa, who is also a freelance, who want to know those who need to go, now that we've opened the intercity travel, and those who have to carry passengers needs to register, we've said that. He would like to know whether that will apply also to the local. Is it just intercity? I think that was his question. Let's tackle those 2 and we'll go to the next one.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Kudzai, for the question on business hours. The main issue that we're looking at is the issue of gyms and stuff, for sports stuff, so that they begin at 6:30 and close at 6:30 in the evening. 6:30 morning, 6:30 in the evening. Now, what is the implication of this on the curfew? The curfew is still in place. It has not been removed. Now, on the issue of intercity travel, the issue about transportation, generally, all transporters are registered. But we are now talking about intercity travel because you know, according to our current regulations or previous regulations, intercity travel was not taking place in a formal way. So now we are saying every transporter who is interested in participating in the business of intercity transportation, they have to register with the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure Development. I think this gives an answer to these 2 questions.
Thank you.
I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Professor Morgira, for answering Kudzai Madzire and Tafadzwa. And then there's Blessed Mtanga, Honorable Professor, as Chairperson of the Task Force. His question is about, he wants to know whether schools will access this 600 million, as we were talking about opening of schools and the budget which Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education has got. Let's answer that first, then we'll go to the next one.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. 600 million was allocated to the Ministry for Primary and Secondary Education for the sole purpose of facilitating the opening of schools in various aspects that include PPE, PPE meaning sanitizers and other things that make them be able to open while observing the WHO and Ministry of Health guidelines. Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, in summary, are schools. So when the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education has been allocated that money is specifically for schools. I don't know, Blessed, if I can just say, how do you define Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education? I define them as schools from ECD to A-level. So money is for schools. I thank you.
Thank you, Professor Murira. I'm sure Blessed is happy. Yeah, but I thought last time we talked about what the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education is doing to make sure that the children and the students are safe in terms of containment of this disease. So I'm sure you understood exactly what he said. Then again, Blessed is excited about the VID opening up, and he says, what type of service will they be providing to the public, especially in terms of licensing, people working, there was unscrupulous people taking people's money about licensing.
Thank you, Blessed, for that question. The context in which VID came is that when we are opening the intercity transportation, or any public transportation for that matter, licensing is done by VID. Therefore, it wouldn't make sense to open the transportation system and not open VID. So it's basically for the convenience of the transport operators. When it comes to specific details on what exactly are different services that are within VID, I think this information will be provided by the Ministry of Transport when it's doing its operations. I think.
Thank you very much, Professor. Then I come to you, Honorable Minister Kazembe, the roadblocks. And this was again from Blessed Lushanga. He wants to know, since we have relaxed, are police not able to manage roadblocks without the assistance from soldiers? And he went on to say, are police severely undermanned? Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and I want to thank Blessing for that good question. It's not about capacity per se. It depends on the objectives of the operation. As we'd appreciate, we are under the public health order, and in such circumstances, all the security services can be called upon to assist in providing, services to the civil society. The same way they've been called before to assist in the cycle of Nidai. In so many cases, the army is called in to assist. And also, by the way, remember, over and above the many roadblocks that we have to deal with now in view of the pandemic, these are not ordinary roadblocks, because we now have roadblocks across the country everywhere to try and contain and maintain and contain this pandemic. That implies that we have got more roadblocks than we have had before, and at the same time, we still have to provide other services that are supposed to be provided by the police under normal circumstances. So it's not about capacity per se, but it depends on the operation. In this particular case, like I said earlier on, we are under public health, and the army can be called upon to assist in such services. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kazembe. And again, the last but not least question is again directed to you, Honorable Minister, about the Central Registry, which is now going to be open. He wanted to know what is the status of the passport production. He wants to know whether you now have the material and the whatever inputs you need to produce passports.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And again, let me thank the Tafat, I think it was. I hope I got it right for the question. My answer is in two, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that, given that we're going to be providing, not all the services, by the way, we've actually requested for partial opening so that we can provide some services. So in that regard, I can safely say we've got enough to deal with specific cases. Maybe let me explain what services we'll be providing. When it comes to passport, we're not opening for the general public. It's only for those who are in critical need of passport for now, which means I'm talking about those who probably want to seek medical treatment out of the country, or those who have proof that they have to, probably they've been offered an opportunity to work outside the country or an opportunity to go and study outside the country. Those are the cases, the critical cases we are looking at. So those, we don't expect them to be so many for now. And we actually have substantial amount of consumables, but we don't have enough consumables at this stage to be able to provide services to everybody. But having said that, we have also been working even under COVID to try and clear the backlog with the minimum resources that we've had. And I'm glad to say, to date we've cleared more than 200,000. I think we are now going towards 300,000 in terms of clearance of the backlog. So we have been using consumables, and I'm glad, and I would like to sincerely thank Treasury for availing those resources. But as you'd appreciate, it has been difficult because of the COVID pandemic, which meant that the need for resources was overwhelming. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Honorable Kazembe Kazembe. I'm back to you, Chief Secretary, for the second round.
Thank you very much. Second round, any offers? Yes, at the back.
Yes, my name is Janet Munyaka from ZBC. My question is directed to Professor Mwira. Prof, Zimbabwe is divided into 5 agro-ecological regions, and these were divided according to the rainfall pattern, the soil quality, and the vegetation, among others. Just want to find out from you now, under the revised Agro-ecological zones, how many are they going to be, and which other factors were considered besides the rainfall pattern?
Okay, very good question. Any other volunteer? Yes, second vice.
Yeah, sure. I'm doing a follow-up. My question was not answered. I said, what mechanisms have been put in place to ensure that schools directly get that money? So in essence, Minister, there's a school in Gokwe. How are you going to give it money? How is it going to access that money? That is my question. What mechanism have you put in place to ensure that happens? Because we have heard government talking about money, but the actual disbursement of the money is not there. Now, I ask this question because government almost always gets involved when schools increase fees to meet their needs and demands. And government intervenes and says, no, this is not going to happen. Now, you would understand that parents did not pay school fees for the second term, but there are fixed costs that the schools have to take care into account, like labor charges, water bills, and stuff like that. How are these going to be paid, given that schools budget to the last dollar for every term? They do not budget for profit or for eventualities like this one that happened. So I want to know the system that you put in place, that 1 million is going to go to this province or some such scientific, you're a professor of science. So you have to be specific in terms of how you are going to deal with this issue. And my last question is, since you've also relaxed these measures, last week Cabinet announced that it was going to allow retailers of beer to sell. Are you also relaxing the sitting so that people can drink from?
That I didn't say.
I said last week. Are you going? Is there any further? My question is: there any further relaxation?
If it was there, I would have announced it.
Okay. Let me. Yes. Any other volunteer? Or we put that is the last.
We don't have any more.
Yes. So over to you, Chair.
Oh, there's no question. Okay. I'm sure you got the question from Janet Munyaka, and this is on the Zimbabwe's revised agro-ecological regions. She wanted to know whether under that revised agro-ecological regions, how many regions are there as compared to what was there before?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jan. It is very important to know that agriculture happens within a certain climate envelope. That's why, for example, the trees that you see in the Zambezi Valley and the trees that you see in the Highveld are different. And that climate is not constant, even by textbook definition. It tells you about the average weather conditions that are recorded over a period of about 30 years or so. Therefore, what we had in Zimbabwe were agro-ecological regions that were developed in 1960. In actual fact, they were developed between 1945 and 1960. For 15 years, they were working on that. And an analysis of Zimbabwe's climate shows us that from about 1951 up to now, 2009 to 2020 or so, we have two distinct climatic climatic cycles or climate types. Between 1951 and 1982, you see a clear break in temperature. The scientists found out that there's a clear break in temperature, whereby from about 1982 to now, the temperatures have increased at an average of 2 degrees. So the maximum temperature shows a break between 1951 and now it shows a break in about 1982, where the temperatures are a bit higher by 2 degrees. Now, when you look at the rainfall, it does the same thing. What therefore that means is that the agro-ecological regions, which were 5 in 1960, were representing a climate of that period, of 1951 to 1982. It means any agricultural practice that is practiced using those agro-ecological regions and is being practiced in 2020 can only result in hunger, which means round pegs in square holes and round pegs. So, what the scientific team did under the Zimbabwe National Geospatial and Space Agency was to recognize this and redefine the regions. And in the redefinition of the regions, one major highlight is to show that all the regions changed somehow, which means some areas that were region 2 are now region 3. Some areas that were region 3 are now region 4. The general trend is that the regions migrated towards the dry ones. But another highlight, Janet, is that region 5 is now divided into region 5A and region 5B. In terms of region 5A, this is the area around the Limpopo Valley. In this area, the rainfall is below 600 millimeters. And there is no practical rain-fed agriculture that you can do there. And then 5B, which is the old region 5. So you can see that the agriculture, the regions have shifted. You know, agro-ecological zones are an attempt at precision agriculture because you have to practice agriculture where it is most appropriate. So you will find out that all these changes that have taken place and our vision to become food self-sufficient and become an exporter can only happen when we do this important work that is the basis of agricultural planning. So, to answer you, we are looking at between 1951 and today, there are 2 climatic periods, which was 1951 to 1982 and from 1982 up to now. However, our old agroecological regions were for the climate of then, and using them for agricultural planning can only be a disaster. Except maybe of agroecological region 1, which is influenced by the mountains, it's almost constant. But the rest, you can actually try and look at what our agricultural performance was doing. And most of it could be explained by a mismatch between agricultural practice and the agro-ecological region. While you are imagining that you are in region 2, maybe you are now in region 3, and you are surprised why your crops are not doing well. So I have taken the liberty of talking more, but there is a lot of change that has taken place, and the scientists have captured that, and it captures very well our national vision 2030 of becoming an upper middle income economy, and it backs up our agricultural plan, which the Honorable Minister of Agriculture enunciated, and we believe we are on the move in terms of scientific ways of farming and making sure that our agriculture is responding to the current climate. So Janet, in a very long way, I have answered you plus extra.
No, that's very good. Thank you very much, Honorable Professor Mugera, for that very precise answer, for precise agriculture. Now the last question, I wish you had ended with that one. Blessed was to take it back to the issue about that 600 million, which government has given the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education to make sure that all the reopening of schools will go smoothly, and that we'll be able to protect our students and our teachers. So, Honorable Mugera.
Thank you, Blessed. I thought I answered you, but I will comply. 600 million was given to the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, specifically to help schools with issues of PPEs and preparations for the safety of our students everywhere in the country. At this moment, I will not be able to tell you $60 was given to this school and so forth. I will then begin to be in a territory where I'm doing operations instead of policy. And I think the Honorable Minister of Primary and Secondary Education, as well as the Secretary particularly, will be able to give you details of what money went where and so forth. But government availed that 600 million of the 800 million that was budgeted for, which is quite something in terms of our preparedness. I am not going to comment about school fees, because this money is not for school fees. This money is for protection against COVID-19, making sure that all the provisions that are necessary to the best of our ability are given to the schools, so that we are able to ensure to the best of our ability the safety of the students and staff. As to mechanisms of making sure that this money is used for that purpose, the government has enough mechanisms to monitor the use of resources. And you would know, of course, where there is misuse, there is, the things are audited by the Auditor General, which are the mechanisms, isn't it? Government has many mechanisms which are used to make sure that resources are used appropriately. Where they are abused, government has also mechanisms through the Ministry of Home Affairs to arrest. I think.
I just wanted to say, I noticed you had brought the Zimbabwe Agro-ecological zones. You wanted to talk to it, or just wanted to show it?
I think
I'm sure Janet will be happy if we can talk.
Janet, this is the new agro-ecological region map. And on this new agro-ecological region map, you will be able to see very distinct things. For example, this is now region 5B. This dark area, region 5B, which is the driest. And you see that it only exists in the southeast and local, in the south, in the valley. And one of the things that you will be able to see also is that region 2 is contracted significantly.
Yes. We try to make sure it's
Oh, no, it will do Okay. So, this is a lot of implications. Because what used to be region 3 in certain instances is now region 4. What used to be region 2 is now region 3. What used to be region 5A is now 5B, and so forth and so on. So in terms of agricultural planning, this is the tool, because I believe that when we were studying and we were growing up and we were talking about agriculture, there's no way we can talk about agriculture in Zimbabwe when we are not talking about the so-called natural regions. But the only thing now is that the climate has changed. And we cannot use the 1960 map to plan for the future. Therefore, government took its time and its scientists to really relook at this because of the existence of satellite imagery as well as geospatial technologies. The work that took 15 years, from 1945 to 1960, was able to take us only 2 years, from July 2018 to July 2020. So, this is the new agro-ecological map of Zimbabwe, which is now the official record of how Zimbabwe plans its agriculture from now onwards. And we believe that it will improve the precision with which we do the planning and, consequently, the yields that we will get from whatever we are doing in terms of livestock and crops.
Good. I'm glad I took you back to class, Professor. I've just left to thank my colleague ministers and thank you and Chief Secretary.
Thank you, honorable ministers and members of the media. This was an exciting I think briefing.
Yeah, thank you.
We're all back to class. Thanks.